Hey y'all, it's me, Kevvie. Wow, September has been just an incredible reading month. I am officially out of my slump in a big way. I may have only read 9 books, but they were outstanding. Ooh, enough chit chat, let's get to it. I started out September reading Tender is the Flesh. This is a fantastic Argentinian dystopian novel where all animal meat has become tainted. So the meat industry has shifted into producing solely what they call special meat, aka human. Yep, this is a book about government-sanctioned cannibalism. Yes. Agustina Bazterrica did a brilliant job taking this premise and examining it from every possible angle. She explores how such a change would impact GMOs, the media, pop culture, homelessness, religion, death and funerals, animal testing, hunting. All these aspects of society that seem disconnected became fundamentally transformed by the transition to cannibalism. The book's world building is by far its best asset, but it also has a phenomenal plot. The book is told from the perspective of a man who works in the meat industry and has grown to hate his job so much that he has become a vegan. Our protagonist is mourning the loss of his child and doing so on his own after his wife left him. Then one day, one of the ranchers he works with delivers a gift to his home: a single head of cattle, a female human. Now he's stuck in this conundrum of what to do with this person who is legally not a person. Without outright saying this, the book also wants you to consider that no single virus would be capable of infecting every single animal species. So how much of what we've been told about the reason for eating people is true, and how much of it was made up by the government to push their agenda of population control? Overpopulation becomes much less of an issue when you can just devour the lowest classes. Tender is the Flesh is easily one of the best books I've read this year. I followed up Tender is the Flesh with another excellent dystopian read, The Past is Red by Catherynne M. Valente. This is my first time reading Valente, but I've heard nothing but praise for her work. The Past is Red is about a dystopian future where the ice caps have melted and all of the earth is submerged underwater. People have managed to survive somehow, stuck living on a giant island of trash the size of Texas, floating across the ocean. One resident on the island is a woman named Tetli, who is so hated that anyone else can say or do whatever they want to her, and her only legal response is to say thank you for the instruction. As the story unfolds, we learn more about the culture and the politics of this island and what caused Tetli to become such an outcast. Valente did an outstanding job with the world building in this book. Each region of the island is named after the type of trash it's comprised of. Most people are on equal social footing, except for the people of Electric City, who by the privilege of the location of their birth, have exclusive access to what little electricity remains on the island. We get to follow Tetli as she traverses all of these different garbage regions. Oh, it's just so cool. The plot of the story was good too, and I loved the way it all came together in the end, but the strong point of this book is absolutely in exploring this world that Valente built. I really enjoyed reading this and cannot wait to read more of her. I read 2 NetGalley books in September. The first was a super meta thriller called The Woman in the Library, and the other was a queer graphic gothic romance called Hollow. Both of these will have full reviews in my next NetGalley video. I also read 2 Discworld novels in September. First, I finally read The Last Hero. It's been sitting on my shelves back there for months at this point, and oh, it was so worth the wait. It is absolutely 100% my favorite Discworld novel I've read. It tells the story of Cohen the Barbarian and his cronies, heroes who have had countless exciting adventures but are now getting up in years. Afraid of dying a non-heroic death, Cohen and co. decide to go on one final quest: to return to the gods what had once been taken from them: fire. Meaning they're going to blow up Mount Olympus. Well, the Discworld equivalent of Mount Olympus, called Dun Manifestin. Obviously, blowing up the home of the gods at the top of a mountain in the center of the disc would have horrible ramifications for the entire population of the disc. So Ankh-Morpork's patrician Vetinari works with the wizards of Unseen University to hatch a plan to stop them. He hires Leonardo da Vinci, on the disc named Leonard de Querm, to build a spaceship that will fly underneath the disc and back up the other side with enough momentum to reach Dunmanifestin before the heroes do. Our spaceship crew consists of Leonard, Carrot, the guy from the City Watch series, who was so obviously heir to the throne of the kingdom, but chose instead to remain a humble policeman, and everyone's favorite risk-averse wizard, Rincewind. This book is all about what it means to be a hero. Cohen and friends were obviously heroes in their heyday, but now they've taken on the role of the villain in the novel. And our flight crew is trying to stop the heroes. So are they villains, or are they heroes for trying to prevent the world from ending? When the heroes team up with a notorious villain, does the villain become a hero, or do the heroes become villains? The heroes even kidnapped a minstrel because they needed someone to write a catchy song about their adventure so they'd become immortal. Kidnapping, of course, isn't a very heroic thing to do. The last hero takes this dichotomy of hero and villain and twists it and blurs the lines at every opportunity. Oh, it's glorious. The Discworld novels are always fucking funny, and The Last Hero is no exception. The funniest part to me was when the heroes were approaching Dunmanifestin, and they're like, wait a minute, the gods will never let mortals just walk in, so we have to pretend that we're brand new gods. So then they become the god of fish, the god of bloody swearing, and the god of things. Oh fuck, this book is so funny. Also, The Last Hero is fully illustrated, and the pictures were bloody gorgeous. Oh my gosh, they were just lovely. So many just full page spreads, and even annotated diagrams that were full of even more jokes. The Last Hero is fantastic. And I can see myself returning to this one over and over. After that, I read what is currently the last book in our Discworld read-along with Katya, Scott, and Rosie, and that was The We Free Men. This is the first YA novel in the series, and it's about an aspiring witch named Tiffany Aching. Tiffany really wants to become a witch, and is thrown into the role after the disappearance of her little brother. She gets help from a group of pixies known as the Knack Mack Feegle, also known as the titular We Free Men. These guys were hysterical. They're a super duper stereotypical Scottish army, so think like Braveheart. But then think, what would the cast of Braveheart look like if they were replaced by Smurfs? Seriously, it's a bunch of little blue men in kilts, yelling and swearing and fighting. The Discworld series has its origins in parody, so the books are always full of references to other fantasy series and tropes. As I'm not much of a fantasy reader, most of these go over my head. However, since The We Free Men was a YA novel, its references are to YA fantasy, which I was able to pick up on more easily. For instance, the main villain in The We Free Men is the White Witch from Narnia. There's a lot of Alice in Wonderland peppered throughout. The Knack Mack Feegle lived down a hole in the garden, and Tiffany has to climb down it like Alice did through the rabbit hole. And then there's that whole question of, did all this really happen, or was she just dreaming? Well, it's a painfully tired cliche at this point. Its use in this book felt very reminiscent of Alice in Wonderland. There aren't any of the usual recurring Discworld characters in this book, at least not until the very end. But their cameo is such that you don't need to know or have read the past books to appreciate them. The We Free Men could be a great introduction to the Discworld series. For that reason, and because it doesn't go too heavily into explaining the physics of the Discworld or the magic system and all of that. Much more palatable for someone new to the series, but also a wonderful read for veterans of the Disc. Even if you've never read any Discworld before, this is definitely one you should consider. I loved it so much, and would even put it on par with The Last Hero. They are both just exceptional stories. I told y'all that I loved every single book this month, but I did have a DNF. And that was The Pisces by Melissa Broeder, which is a real bummer because her book Milk Fed was one of my absolute favorite reads from last year. I didn't think The Pisces was bad by any means, and I really wanted to keep reading, but I found the first couple chapters to just be really triggering, and it flung me into this downward spiral mentally. I should probably clarify that this isn't one of those like real big triggers that people need to watch out for. It's just more a me thing. Just the protagonist was looking at this really attractive couple and going on and on for 2 chapters about how easy they must have it. And as someone society deems to be on the extreme opposite end of that spectrum for being both fat and trans, that just put me in a real negative headspace. So I DNF'd it at 12%. I'm sure it's still a good book, and I'd like to give it another try someday. I just was not in a position to handle that currently. I only finished one audiobook in September, and that was Finders Keepers, the second book in Stephen King's Bill Hodges trilogy. After loving Mr. Mercedes so much, I went right into the second book. But I gotta say, it did not live up to the first one. In Mr. Mercedes, this heinous crime occurs right at the very beginning, and then the entire book is dedicated to Bill Hodges and his array of sidekicks tracking down clues and putting pieces together to hunt down the Mercedes killer. Finders Keepers has a completely different format. We've got a new baddie this time around, and the whole first half of the book is just dedicated to setting up his backstory and that of a teen boy who gets mixed up in the whole thing. Then they gradually introduce Bill and co, but at this point they don't even know about the case and our criminal, just that this girl's older brother has been acting strange. By the time they figure out what's wrong with the teen, they immediately figure out who the criminal is and are on their way to catch him. I really didn't like this format because the best parts of the first book were Bill and Holly and Jerome working together, combining their unique skills in order to track down the bad guy. In Finders Keepers, the focus is entirely on the criminal and the teen, with our heroes taking the back seat. I was so disappointed I didn't even want to continue the series. And then I looked up the next book, End of the Watch. The Mercedes killer, who was the big bad of book 1, apparently fakes having permanent brain damage and is back to killing people. I don't know if you remember from my video last month, but my least favorite parts of Mr. Mercedes were the chapters from that guy's perspective. And I have absolutely no interest in reading a whole nother book from his point of view. So yeah, as of now, no desire to finish that series. If you've been following my channel for a while, like a long while, you may have noticed that I haven't read that many mysteries this year, which is a bummer because that's my favorite genre. I'm thinking that through the rest of the year, I really want to focus more on mysteries. Starting with A Rule Against Murder by Louise Penny. This is the 4th book in the Three Pines mystery series, and so far I have loved every single one of them. A Rule Against Murder is about this isolated Canadian resort where Inspector Gamache and his wife are celebrating their anniversary. While they're there, there's a family reunion of sorts going on, and everyone in that family is just awful. They all hate each other and are mean to everybody else, and they just think the world revolves around them. A statue gets erected on the property in honor of their departed patriarch, and then that night one of the siblings is murdered, crushed by said statue. Louise Penny is such a phenomenal mystery writer. Y'all know I'm excellent at solving mysteries, but I don't think I've ever solved one of hers. And with A Rule Against Murder, I had no clue who done it. But once it was revealed, it made so much sense. Every single piece of evidence was dangled right in front of my face. It just never occurred to me to put them together in that way. Brilliant. Another thing I really loved about this one was the climax. Now, even though I'm discussing something at the very end of the book, I'm not discussing any spoilers. But when it's time to confront the killer, Louise Penny plays the pronoun game. The entire scene, they are only referred to as the murderer. So even though the character is right there, and the stakes have never been higher, you still have no idea who it is. I love this kind of thing. She did the same thing in her first book in the series, Still Life, where the pronoun game led me to make assumptions about who I thought it was, only to have it totally flipped on me once they revealed who it actually was. I love the tension that that technique builds. Oh, it's so cool. Mary Roberts Reinhardt did a similar thing in her mystery novel The Door, which there's a great piece of trivia about that book, which I will not repeat because it sort of spoils it. But anyway, the mystery in this novel was excellent. Louise Penny also does a great job with the cozy aspect of the cozy mystery. While this book is not set in the heartwarming village of Three Pines, the maison still has that wonderful charm. And then they do wind up going to Three Pines for a bit, and all of our beloved characters return. Clara and Peter, Olivier and Gabri, Ruth and her duck. Yeah, Ruth, who is this crotchety, cantankerous old woman who never has a nice thing to say about anybody has a pet duck that just waddles around with her. I love that that duck made an appearance, even if it was just in passing. The first 3 books in the series had this subplot that connected them. Inspector Gamache has made enemies in his career, and one of them was trying to take him down. Fortunately, that plotline wrapped up with the previous book, and they didn't try to bring it back. Instead, there's a new Gamache side plot with much lower stakes and seems to have been pretty isolated. I would not expect it to come up again. So while the first 3 books in the series very much need to be read in order because of that side plot, A Rule Against Murder could be read on its own, even if you don't read the first 3. This is such an incredible series, and whether you start here or at the beginning, you're gonna have a great time. So there you have all the books I read in September. Damn, I told y'all this was a great reading month. Wow. What was your favorite book you read in September? You gonna pick up any of these? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And if it pleases and sparkles, I'll see you in the next video. Mwah!